Compassion, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the 14th and possibly the final, with no home left remaining, no country to practice Tibetan Buddhism and reincarnate, says compassion's inherent in humans. Humans want to solve problems and make decisions to help one another, in other words. But unfortunately, problem solving often has to do with violence and war, soldiers and warriors and weapons. And long ago, there were these countries who formed these armies and these navies and these Marine Corps, Air Force, parts of planet Earth, with humans involved. They went over to Nazi Germany and removed Hitler from power and forced him to commit suicide and face his cowardly and horrible body and brain. They went to Vietnam and attempted to stop communism when there were no Facebook logins, Twitter accounts, Instagram photo feeds, and desktop computers and laptop computers and iPhones to read about a duality between a government who say they are free and proud and a government who wants freedom within confines of their system and processes. And now, there are these political activists and protesters who have taken a word, fascism, and declared they're solving the problem. Began long ago with politics. But unfortunately, their language involves no mathematics other than a location, a sector, a time, and how long attention takes to blink, to sneak up on someone, to let them know there are ghosts and their mystery has more dominance than anyone who wants to stop their goal and objective, to have more art and culture and less racism. Using theory and philosophy similar to 1970 and the 1900s, and ignoring what neuroscience has taught and researched about processes with human brain and body with no system. Systems are racist, they say. And unfortunately, anarchy has to do with another system, with processes to make sure nobody forms governments, nobody forms police forces to make safe passage to a grocery store and secure travel home on a highway where pirates and villains, murderers and serial killers find their targets and victims. Similarly, worst of all, 3 separate words: Black Lives Matters, a war chant during a civil war previously, a war yell, motivation and inspiration to eliminate those racists, they say, are preventing their culture, their race and ethnicity from dying and suffering now. Both groups join together with common language, philosophy, and theory, similar to the men in this building now, on the floor I live in my apartment. A man who loves friends as veterans, veterans who are his buddies, and a man who talks down to me and then looks up and expects a response, who declare their security and safety a dominance needed for women's safety and those less aware to feel safe and secure. And then there's science, climate change, more language, more descriptions, more ideology, philosophy, and theory, with science now included in their argument, and compassion used from spiritual practices to help people be more mindful instead of beating their head with a bat or shooting them dead. All 3 now together working towards their separate goals and objectives. With the most worrisome of all, death and dying and suffering and poverty and hunger as their motivation and inspiration to limit and restrict and control, hit a wall, whisper and use their voice to cause confusion and misdirection and hallucination for a consciousness they say has to do with stimulation, psychedelics, hallucinatory substances, and now also other drugs included. And they all, most tragically, drive their cars to their protests, break windows they say they need to save, for planet Earth to heal and not use so much fossil fuel and make so much CO2, leaving trash in the streets for birds to eat, writing more letters and dialect on signs, drawing graffiti explaining their process for agreement and their reward for good behavior and appropriate speech and sound approved by those dressed in black instead of blue, those wearing combat boots instead of sneakers, and those driving Teslas and electric cars instead of trucks from those rednecks in the woods, calling themselves, their egos, their minds, feminists, gender neutral, transgender humanists. Forgetting what Tibetans do well the most, and the culture they proclaim they are saving and making better, they have mastered and now lost in a similar system with processes they are saying now should be in place to make children grow old and kids and babies less afraid. When the oceans rise, the glaciers melt, and food stops and runs out now.